Welcome back. This is the Now Morning Show. And earlier this month, the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority Bill 2018 was passed in the Upper House. The bill seeks to establish the Revenue Authority, the TTRA. This agency is meant to replace the Board of Inland Revenue and the Customs and Excise Division. It is meant to be autonomous. How will this transition take place? And here to tell us all about it is Senator the Honorable Allyson West, Minister in the Ministry of Finance. And Minister, good morning.
Good morning, Lisa. How are you?
I am doing well, and I trust that you are safe.
I'm trying to stay safe. Thank you.
Wonderful. So, Minister, let's get straight into it. What are the current challenges in the existing system that justifies the change or the need for the Revenue Authority?
The Board of Inland Revenue and the Customs and Excise Division both fall under the Public Service Commission. And that means that they join about 60,000 other public servants who are managed by that entity. That entity itself is understaffed and has its own challenges. So it's not as effective and efficient as it should be in hiring, promoting, disciplining staff. And therefore, both organizations are between 40 and 60% understaffed. And that significantly impacts their ability to provide the services that they need to provide to generate the income that Trinidad and Tobago needs to operate.
So are there other countries that have similar revenue authorities, and how successful were they in improving the revenue collection?
There are several countries throughout the world that have revenue authorities. From the large ones like the United States, the IRS, which we all have heard about, to small ones like our Caribbean neighbors. Of the four, what are called more developed countries within the Caribbean, which would be Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Jamaica, and Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago is the only one that does not have a revenue authority, that is still operating under the civil service concept. And it is the least efficient at collecting revenues among the four more developed countries within the Caribbean.
So, you know, taxpayers are going to be asking, how is this revenue authority going to benefit me? We're talking about collection for the state, but how does it benefit the taxpayer?
Well, the state collects money for the benefit of taxpayers. The state is called upon to do all sorts of things in the normal scheme of things. We have to provide free hospital care, free education, subsidized bus services, subsidized airlines to Tobago services, subsidized ferry, fixed roads, and so on and so forth. The list of requirements or services to be provided by the state is a long one, and that's in the normal course of things. Put yourself in the COVID-19 environment, and you will see how much more the demand on the state becomes, because not only are the normal services to be provided, but people are reaching out asking for actual monetary and other help. And that all costs money, and that money needs to come to the extent as much as possible from taxes collected from the citizens, because as and when you seek other sources of income, it's usually borrowing, which puts an additional burden on the very citizens who are paying taxes to repay the money borrowed and the interest.
So you're saying that the authority means that we're increasing the efficiency of the collection process, but does that mean that citizens would have to pay more taxes or more in taxes?
We actually are hoping that that means if we collect what is currently due from all the citizens who are expected to pay tax, that the burden on citizens will be less than it currently is. Because at the moment, it has been identified that we are under collecting taxes by an amount of about $11 to $15 billion a year. If we can collect even half of that, that will close the deficit, and therefore it will mean that the state no longer has to borrow. So all we have to do to get us to a much better place is to collect what is currently due at the current rates from the citizens who are expected to pay their fair share.
So this would be from persons who are not currently paying taxes, for example.
Right.
Right.
Either paying taxes or paying less than they should be paying.
Okay. So what accounts for the inefficiencies in the existing system, and what are the risks involved in creating a revenue authority, therefore?
What we have done in crafting the legislation is tried to eliminate the areas that people would normally consider risk. Now, one of the things that's important for a revenue authority, for any tax administration, whether it's a revenue authority or the current configuration, is that people's tax affairs, people's financial affairs are required to be kept confidential. And we have set up systems so that that remains, because it seemed to be sacrosanct, right? So we have set up systems that remain. We have set up systems in the legislation to protect the employees' jobs, to protect their wages. We have set up systems to ensure that the government cannot interfere in the operation or in the assessment of any individual's taxes.
So the revenue.
So we believe that legislation as currently drafted is robust enough to address all the concerns that citizens can reasonably have in respect of the change from what we currently have to a revenue authority.
The Revenue Authority, as discussed in the Senate, will address the current tax gap. And is that what you meant when you said $11 billion?
That is,
yeah?
And that is the lower end of the estimate. The estimate ranges from 11 to 15 million.
Right.
That is one of the things that the Revenue Authority will be charged with doing, ensuring that as far as possible we collect that $15 billion that is outstanding, that remains in the hands of citizens every year, rather than to the state to pay the taxes. Because what happens is that employees, for example, don't have a choice of paying taxes because they're taxed by a private source. So the burden of taxes falls heavily on those employees who are least able to pay, excuse me, and it also falls on the businesses that are compliant. But there's so many businesses that are not compliant that we need to ensure that we find them and collect the relevant amount of taxes from them.
Okay, let's talk about governance now. With regard to governance, what level of control and influence will the Minister of Finance and other politicians have where the TTRA is concerned?
The Minister of Finance has the power to appoint the board in accordance with the legislation. So the legislation lays out the composition of the board, and the Minister of Finance has the power to appoint the members to the board. But in that context, we need to remember that the board is only authorized to make policy decisions in respect of the operations, finance, HR, that kind of thing. It is not involved in the day-to-day operation of the entity itself. So it's only making management policy decisions. The Minister of Finance also has the power to appoint the CEO, who will be called the Director General of the TTRA. And that is the officer who will be in charge of the units that will be collecting taxes. But to create independence in the process, we have copied to some extent the process involved in appointment of the Commissioner of Police. Right. So we have the identical type of debate that goes on in terms of approving the appointment of the Commissioner of Police. We will have that in respect of appointment of the Director General, so that not only the Parliament has its say in whether or not this person is appropriate, but the country at large is aware of who the person is and what he brings to the table.
And Minister, you said that the Minister of Finance will be responsible for appointing, or will be involved in the appointing of the CEO. How will the CEO be protected from political interference?
Well, remember, the CEO is appointed by a process that is public, so that any attempt to fire the CEO will be similarly public. The same way it is difficult to say tomorrow, let us fire Gary Griffith without explaining that to the public. It will be similarly difficult to fire the CEO without having to explain that to the public, because it is a public appointment in the way that it is organized.
All right, so let's move on to the topic of staffing and transfers now. Will the current staff of the BIR and the Customs and Excise Division be able to keep their jobs? And if not, how will they transition to the TTRA?
The current staff of both organizations will have the right under law to determine whether they want to transfer to the TTRA or remain in the public service.
Yes.
And once they make that decision, a position will be found for them either in the public service or at the Board of Inland Revenue, commensurate with their qualifications and experience, and at salaries no less favorable than they currently enjoy.
But what about staff?
So that is guaranteed in the legislation.
Okay, but what about staff who may not want to transfer to the new authority?
They have the right to stay in the public service with a remuneration package that is no less favorable, and positions will be found for them again that are commensurate with their salary and with their education and experience.
Okay, Minister, how would the assignments to the positions go on?
It is their choice as to whether they wish to stay in the public service or move to the Revenue Authority.
And how would the assignments to the positions in the new body, the TTRA, how will that be done?
Well, we'll look at the qualifications and experience of each member of staff and determine where it is best to place them in the new organization.
Okay.
Because the new organization, of course, is designed in a way to make the operation of taxes and customs and excise much more efficient. So there will not be necessarily the same nomenclature for the positions. So we will determine what needs to be done and whether this person's qualification and experience will best suit him or her to do that, to fill that role.
So what would be the new size of the organization? Is it that it's right sizing? What's the new size of the new organization that will be in place, and what are some of the terms and conditions for the staff?
Well, as I mentioned previously, the Customs and Excise and the Inland Revenue are both significantly understaffed. So they're operating between 40 and 60% of where they should be. Combined, the new organization will exceed that complement of staff in size.
Okay.
So that if everybody at the Board of Inland Revenue and Customs and Excise decides they want to come across, there is room for them and more.
Okay. And will the staff be unionized?
Everybody in Trinidad and Tobago has the right for freedom of association guaranteed by the Constitution.
Okay.
So that the staff had the right to have their union of their choice.
Okay. One of the things that I think staff would be concerned about would be retirement and pension benefits. When will the pension plan be administered, Minister?
Okay, so their pension is also guaranteed by legislation. At the moment, they're entitled to a pension from the central government, and that will continue until the plan is formed in the Revenue Authority itself.
Yes.
Legislation gives the Revenue Authority 2 years within which it is to establish the plan.
Okay. Lastly, before I let you go, with the aspects of financial management, transparency, and accountability in mind, will the board be able to spend the taxes collected?
Oh, not at all. The taxes that are collected on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago will go directly into the account of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The Revenue Authority will have its own bank account, but that bank account will only contain funds received as approved by the budget process for its operations and any income that it generates from the provision of services. So, for example, the Board of Inland Revenue, the TTRA is expected to be an effective collector of revenue. And therefore, once it is established, it can offer those services to other government agencies. For example, the Ministry of Agriculture, Minister of Agriculture mentioned in the Senate debate that they are under-collecting their revenues from land rentals, and therefore they may want to outsource that service to the TTRA, and that will allow the TTRA to generate some of its own revenue. So those are the only sources of income that will go into the TTRA's account. Every cent of tax will go directly to the government, into its treasury account.
Minister, there have been repeated reports of alleged corruption. What measures are in place to prevent the occurrence of corruption in any form? And how can citizens be reassured that these adjustments will bring positive changes to the operations and functions of the TTRA?
Well, in terms of corruption, because we have a two-tier system, which we don't, because we will have a two-tier system, which we don't currently have now, we will have the technical officers who will be involved with the collection of tax, and we will have the board to oversee the operation. At the moment, the Comptroller of Customs and the Chairman of the Board of Inland Revenue is responsible for everything that goes on in the Board of Inland Revenue, whether it's HR, whether it's fixing a bulb, whether it's ensuring that the building is fine, to collection of taxes and assessments and so on, border control, that kind of thing. We are seeking to relieve the technical officers of the responsibility for the physical operation and ensure that they can focus on technical activity. In addition to that, we are setting up several measures to ensure that incidences of corruption can be identified in the first instance and dealt with in the second instance. So we are having anonymous whistleblower system where people can electronically report incidences. We are going to have an ombudsman where people can come in and talk. These are all proposals subject to cabinet approval, of course, but we propose to have an ombudsman where people can, where they are aggrieved by anything that occurs to the board, can come in and have their matters addressed. We are going to have an internal audit function, and all of these functions would be removed from the technical operation of the board. So it will not be the person who is involved in the corrupt area, perhaps, or in charge of that person who will be dealing with that. It would be the board directly dealing with that, separate from the technical operations. So we think we are putting in place a very robust system to deal with things like corruption. And unlike what currently occurs, where matters like this will have to be referred to an overburdened public service commission, they take their time along with all the other cases to deal with it and resolve it. It will be dealt with by the entity that is responsible for maximum 2,000 people, and therefore much more efficiently.
Okay. Well, Minister, we're gonna leave it there this morning. I want to thank you very much for joining us and ventilating these issues with regard to the establishment of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority. Senator, the Honorable Allyson West, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Lisa. Have a good day.
You too. All right, we're going to take in a few messages, come right back. The morning show continues. Anchor is already in studio, so you know it's time for e-news after this.